Hey, how's it going, guys? If you're new here, my name is Cameron Nagle. I'm the host of Starting Small, an entrepreneurship podcast where I interview founders on the stories behind their brands. Founders such as Reebok, Kodiak Cakes, North Face, and many more. Along with that, I also work for a startup called MOSH here in Los Angeles as digital marketing manager. MOSH is a protein bar, a wellness startup specifically formulated for your brain. With that, MOSH is also mission driven, where a portion of all proceeds is donated to the Women's Alzheimer's Movement at Cleveland Clinic. And if you clicked on this video, maybe you work at a startup, or you're curious about potentially working at a startup, or you're just wanting to check it out. With this video, I want to give you my top 10 reasons why you potentially may want to join a startup. After being in the direct-to-consumer space for a while now, I have broken down these points specifically on why I enjoy working at a startup, and also why I think it's very beneficial for progressing your career at a hyper-growth pace. With that, let's get into it. Starting out at number 10, you are a part of a very tight community. The CPG, the direct-to-consumer, the e-commerce space is a very tight community. And if you're on LinkedIn, you'll find that to be very true. When I'm on LinkedIn, I'm posting and I scroll throughout the day. I see some of the very similar faces that I like to see throughout the month, where they're giving out advice and they're also facing the same problems, maybe coming up with new campaigns where we can help each other give out new ideas, maybe something we've experienced with a previous campaign or a new launch, where we can benefit and help progress the future of CPG. That's a very beneficial part about working in the startup culture, is collaborating with those brands, where in the big boys in some of the corporate world, you won't be able to partner as easy, but in a startup, it's more grungy, more scrappy, fast-paced. You might be able to partner with some of your favorite brands in the better for you CPG D2C space. And at number 9, creativity and entrepreneurship is encouraged. So if you're like me, you have a very creative mindset, you want to bring out your own ideas and execute on those ideas, a startup is your opportunity to do that. Some founders or some people in leadership in startups will let you run your department and get creative with that and execute ideas. And no idea is a bad idea as long as it's executed well and planned to the point. As a young and recent graduate, this is one of my favorite points because I really get to bring out what my ideas are from what I've grown my own podcast to in the media side. I get to transfer that to my current startup that I'm working at. Also help display my expertise and demonstrate my skills. And for number 8, you get to execute campaigns from start to finish. This kind of leads off of number 9, where you get really freedom to execute your own campaigns. You are put into a department. That doesn't mean you're not going to work in other departments or other campaigns going forward. But if you come up with an idea and that's your task and responsibility to lead that specific campaign or launch, you get to see that happen from start to finish. If you're in the corporate world or somewhere else, sometimes you hand that off. You don't see that project till the end. You're on hands-on all the way through. You come up with the concept, plan it out, come up with creative, come up with copy, come up with etc. to make sure that it's executed fully to the end, and you get to shine your project at the end, knowing that you benefited this project and the success from this from the very beginning. Coming up at number 7 is working at a startup is like working in a very family-based culture. Especially if you're in a smaller startup, you get to know your colleagues very tight, where you can talk about work-related things or unwork-related things. For example, when I'm working at my startup, we're a very lean team, a small team. We'll text each other, we'll Slack each other, which is also another form of messaging, but for businesses. And we'll just send memes or send current issues or current topics that maybe we can implement into our own work, but it's at a very relatable and conversational level. It makes it a lot more fun being in that kind of situation where I can have the freedom to message someone in hierarchy or leadership and know that we can have that kind of conversational relationship going back and forth with knowing our boundaries at the same time. Coming up at number 6, in my opinion, it's very impressive to add to your resume. This all depends on the scale and the credibility of that current startup. If you're just starting up and you can show proof that you've been able to scale this through X amount of years, X amount of months, that's very impressive on your resume. If you're in a larger enterprise or corporation, sometimes you might just talk about your campaigns, talk about your budget that you managed, and that's impressive at the same time. But if you can talk about the proof of concept of launching a business or joining a startup at an early stage, and maybe perhaps that startup grew to 10, 20 employees, 30 employees, and X amount of revenue, those are numbers and stats that you can put on your resume that is very, very likely to shine in a competitive pool of other hires. Coming up at number 4, sometimes you get invited to exclusive events. This is a fun perk, especially for me. I'm based in Los Angeles. So when big events are coming on for the D2C space, sometimes they're based in Santa Monica or LA or Anaheim. I'm just a quick drive away, 10 minutes from Santa Monica, where I can attend those events. Some of these events are directly with some of like the CEOs and the founders of some of these startups that you recognize on your e-commerce store that you might buy from Amazon perhaps, or some of your retail stores. in food and beverage. And it's fun getting to network and engage with those brands, get to know their teams, what their marketing strategies might look like. And then you can also go from those events, build relationships, and turn those into collaborations down the road. Coming up at number 3 is you get to perfect time management. As long as you really put your head down and focus on with projects at hand, you have so much going on. And between, for myself at least, between managing agencies, many different agencies and pools of people, executing my own projects, implementing different ideas, you have to really get good on your feet quick. If you don't know how to manage your time at the scale and the bandwidth needed to work at a startup, it's going to be a tough time. That's the beauty behind it. I enjoy the hustle. I enjoy the management and this kind of like some of the stress that comes with it, knowing that some benefits are going to come down the road. If you get really good at managing your time while working at a startup, you have a very promising future ahead because you're managing different pools, different projects, managing so many different tasks that it's impressive if you can pull all that at a very streamlined process. Coming up at number 2 is you get some internal and external recognition. For example, if there's awards that go on in the direct-to-consumer space, maybe top marketer of the year or top ad of the year, etc., top ad of the quarter. Sometimes you get recognized in the corporate or enterprise world. Your projects are collaborated between a pool of people in your department, a very large pool. But if you are the person who's responsible for conceptualizing, implementing, executing, you're the one who gets recognized. And that's something you can add to your resume. If it's a reward, that's something, but also just internal recognitions for yourself. You feel good about it knowing that this is the result of the work that you put in to execute on this project. Coming up at number 1, and this is a big reason that I encourage people to work at startups, especially out of college or at least interning during college, is you wear many hats. So if you're in the marketing side, maybe you're assisting in operations, or maybe you can help with the design process of new launches, or maybe retail rollouts. That's something that you will never get your hands on if you are in a big corporate or enterprise space. You are just very comprised to what you're doing at the time. Marketing may be a small task towards a color or a content idea, but at a startup, you can help implement the retail strategy. Maybe you're designing the boxes or the shelving that goes into that retail, or maybe you're launching a new campaign with an airline. Your hands and the hats that you wear are all over the place at the startup, and you have to be able to collaborate with your team responsively to make sure that wheel is turning at a smooth pace. I like to paint a picture that working in a startup is like a wheel, a bike wheel with the spindles. If one spindle is off, the startup does not flow correctly or spin correctly. Every single department works together streamlined to be able to hold that wheel together to make sure it's moving forward at a progressive pace. And if everyone can execute in their own task and manage their own ideas and executions correctly, you're going to see success. Well, thank you guys so much for joining this video. And if you work at a startup, I would love to hear some other points that you enjoy that you can provide in the comments, maybe to someone else who hasn't worked in a startup. And if you guys have any other questions, make sure to check the link in this description and feel free to contact me. I'd love to talk to you guys. With that, I'll see you guys next week.